Hello, everybody. It's Mr. Stevens here, back again with Brothers in Arms, the lives and experience of the men who fought the Civil War in their own words by William C. Davis. We are going to jump right back into where we left off, and that was at the beginning of Chapter 8. I hope you guys are still enjoying it. We don't have much left of this book, so enjoy while you can. And let's jump right in to Chapter 8, Countrymen Again. When at last the war was over, the Union victory was won. The men in blue experienced the fullest possible gamut of emotion. Certainly there was a heady feeling of having been the winner. Men cheered, some fired their guns in celebration, yet most met the news with quiet and a surprising quotient of compassion for the men they had beaten. All felt a profound sense of relief. "Never shall I forget the feeling that passed over my soul just before retiring," wrote one Ohioan the day in April Robert E. Lee's Confederate Army surrendered. "The knowledge that now we could go to bed and feel sure of enjoying a full night's rest." Yankees surprised themselves at the absence of vindictive feelings toward their vanquished enemy, and at how quickly all hostility evaporated after the war was officially finished. They had never wanted to fight. Now that it was done, they could not wait to put it all behind them. "I remember how we sat there and pitied and sympathized with these courageous Southerners who had fought for long and dreary years, all so stubbornly, so bravely, and so well, and now, whipped, beaten, completely used up, were fully at our mercy." S. Thompson, 13th New Hampshire Infantry, USA, 1865. When it was all over, the Union celebrated with a grand review of its armies in Washington. They paraded past this grandstand before the eyes of President Andrew Johnson and his cabinet. The victorious leaders received every manifestation of their people's gratitude. General George C. Meade, commander of the Army of the Potomac, was given the Gold Commemorative Medal. Major General Francis Preston Blair received a deluxe presentation sword and scabbard, the customary sign of reward from constituents and public-spirited citizens. "Blow, Gabriel, blow. My God, let him blow. I am ready to die." A North Carolina infantryman, CSA. No Americans had ever been defeated in a war, but now the South had. Worse, they had had a proud military tradition. Now they were beaten. "I wish I could go out in the woods and die drunk and bury all my sorrows," a Kentuckian lamented, while another Reb exclaimed that this was the blackest day of our lives. After the first shock, however, most felt a sudden sense of collapse, physical and mental, that lasted for hours. They spoke very little, but merely sat or lay on the ground, contemplative, trying to sort their emotions at the irrefutable end of their 4-year struggle. If they did talk, it was to comfort and reassure each other that every man had done his best, they had fought a good fight, and that there was no shame in defeat. Some could not do that, though, and melted into the countryside. A very few actually took their own lives. But for most, their only last act of resistance was to bash their rifles against tree trunks and bury their banners rather than see them surrendered. Defeat was something that Confederates could see all around them in 1865. Much of Richmond lay in ruins after disastrous fires and the destruction of military warehouses. The ravages of the war showed in the Confederate flags, like this banner of the 1st Kentucky Orphan Brigade, carried all across the South. It, like its men, lay in tatters. More than any other man, except perhaps Abraham Lincoln, it was General U.S. Grant who finally brought the Confederacy to its knees and the war to an end. This photograph was taken less than a month before General Lee's surrender. "We will go home, make 3 more crops, and try them again." An Anonymous Confederate. Some simply could not accept defeat. When Robert E. Lee surrendered the Army of Northern Virginia, some men slipped away and went into North Carolina to join the Army of Tennessee. And when it surrendered 2 weeks later, some groups refused to be included in the terms. Instead, they moved on, hoping somehow to link with other small bands or to make it to the remaining Confederate Army west of the Mississippi. Confederate President Jefferson Davis himself encouraged this, and in his own escape attempt vowed that they could continue the fight as partisans and prolong the contest for years until the Yankees gave up chasing them. It was a futile and unrealistic hope. Partisans could only operate in a region where there was a friendly civilian population to support them. With all of the coastal areas under Yankee control, Confederates would have had to retreat to the hill and mountain country in the interior, regions where the Unionism always ran strong. Cut off from seaports and foreign aid and unable to make their own weapons and supplies, Confederate guerrillas would have found the Yankees in their front and unsympathetic Southerners in the rear. One of the rocks upon which the South foundered was economics. The Confederacy bravely tried to finance itself with bonds, loans tied to planters' cotton, even treasury notes, but in the end, it was not nearly enough. The last national flag of the Confederacy, this third design was adopted in March of 1865, barely a month before the South's surrender. It was little more than a gesture of defiance. With the Confederacy collapsing, President Davis hoped to continue the war on horseback with partisans and raiders like the indomitable General Nathan Bedford Forrest. It was a futile and pointless hope. Well, sir, where you going? Home, sir, home. General Robert McAllister and a Union private. At the time of the Confederate collapse, the Union Army had 1,034,000 men enlisted and under arms. How were all these men, who had been soldiers for so long, to be returned to civilian life? No one had any experience with disbanding a force of this size. Units from some states were more than 1,000 miles from home, and any state's regiments could be scattered throughout the several field armies. Consequently, each corps had to be broken down regiment by regiment and its men sent home in small groups. Then the War Department had to see to the final pay due the soldiers and provide the transportation home. It was a Herculean task, yet one accomplished with amazing efficiency and in record time. More than $270 million was disbursed on the final paydays, and more than 750,000 men transported and discharged within 6 months of the last surrenders. By February 1866, the United States Army was down to 80,000. For the rest, the last day of service was a bittersweet reunion with old comrades, the leaving of one way of life to take up another. Symbolic of the strength of the Union was its currency. When its armies demobilized and went home, they carried greenbacks like these in their knapsacks. Pennsylvania Avenue in Washington was the last march for many of the Yankees as they passed down the street in the Grand Review in May. Behind them lay not only the war, but the great adventure of their lives. Thanks to the scarcity of hard currency in gold and silver, the Union even issued fractional notes like these for 10, 25, and 50 cents. And we will end there for this video. I believe we have one video left to finish up this read, Brothers in Arms by William C. Davis. I hope you guys are enjoying still, and we will be back shortly with another video to finish this book up. Talk to you guys soon. Bye, guys.